Hello and welcome everyone, it is me, the Davao, also known as the Power To Do List, back for you with the 500 subscriber Q&A. Um, First off, I of course want to get a huge thank you out of the way to, everyone who's been following me um, over these past few years, subscribing to the channel and leaving comments on my videos. It's been an absolute blast interacting with, fellow Yu-Gi-Oh players, but also, specifically fellow Mothtronic players over these couple of years. I do have a collection of questions here, not a whole lot, but definitely a couple ones I'd like to get into and get out of the way. If you have any further ones, leave them down in the comments below in case, you missed your the time frame for submitting one for this video, and I'll get to answering those down below. So if you may be curious about a couple other things, check the comment section for that. Starting off with a question from Dunda Super Jaden herself. I don't know if you're very familiar with the deck, but I'd love to see your take on the Mothtronic archetype, like a deck profile or such. Do you intend on making a video on them? First off, I do have to commend your, sense of humor. I would say I am a bit familiar with the Mothtronic archetype. I think if you check, youtube.com/c/the Power To Do List, you will find a wide array of profiles that, cover also a wide area of archetypes. And if I may be so bold to, leak a bit of DMs, weren't you the one calling me out for saying and another Mothtronic deck profile on that and being like, what? A Mothtronic profile on your channel? I never would have suspected this. But yeah. I mean, it's a good fun question, but I think with that out of the way, we'll move into the next one from Svetomir Shiv. Have you ever played competitively, or do you just enjoy the casual side of the game more? Also, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much of a shit show will the tier 0, the format post Magnificent Mavens, be? To get into the first question, I'm a very casual player. I do enjoy I play Mothtronics. Like, that should tell everything. I do enjoy, the casual side of the game, as it just allows for a wider range of decks to be viable. And also, I think there's a lot more interesting decks viable. It's been a hot minute since, like, an actually competitively viable deck has, really piqued my interest. I think the most recent example would be B-Trooper, probably. And even that deck was only good as, like, the 5th best DPE engine you could throw it into. So yeah, I just enjoy what Konami is doing with, legacy support recently. The new insect stuff based on, Weevil's initial insect cards. And also the revamped Bandit Keith stuff around, Heavy Metal Raiders and Desperado Barrel Dragon. Those are some cards that I like. Well, some of the cards that, like, were my first experience with, modern card design. When I, first started getting back into the game, I pulled a couple packs and, pulled some of those, and I was like, yo, this shit kind of fire. So, I do enjoy the casual side of the game very much, more than the competitive side, although I would be, with a lot of staples being, fairly accessible by now, I would not be against trying out maybe a more competitive environment or deck if, something like that lends itself, because I find a competitive deck interesting or something like that. Also, the second part, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much of a shit show will the tier 0 format will be post Magnificent Mavens? As you can probably tell from my answer, I do not keep up with the competitive metagame much. I know, like, roughly what is viable and why it's viable. But most of my, like, takes on the competitive metagame will probably, mainly be, like, based off what I've heard from, like, people that actually play competitive, and also, like, from my own impressions. I've watched, like, a bit of the European Championship with a friend when I was staying at his place for a weekend. Shoutouts to Daya, by the way, you're a real one. And back then, tier elements, of course, didn't look like nearly as oppressive because this was like in POT format. And the Ishizu cards definitely add a lot to it, and I think everyone has probably seen, the image floated around on Twitter for like a good bit, with like two guys essentially having like chain links 8 laid out because everyone's resolving like their entire Ishizu core and then their tier elements core and all that stuff. Despite like how, of course, polarizing a tier 0 format is, I think this is a fairly like approachable one, because you still need to keep in mind that Tier Element is a deck with very, very, very clear-cut weaknesses. You make a Abyss Dweller against Tier Elements, and that person will probably go cry in a corner. Or like you draw for turn, shotgun Dimension Shifter, and the game's basically over there. Which is the one thing. Yes, Tier Element players can always high roll, draw Havness, because Havness is a quick effect to mill. But that is like, a percentage chance that you can, take. We're playing a card game. There will always be some variance. Sometimes you will draw the out, sometimes you won't. That's just, the nature of a TCG. You cannot, guarantee how everything works. This isn't chess where, every piece does what it's supposed to, and is already on the playing field. At the start of the game, this is a TCG where you play 40 cards. You try to maximize consistency to see starters, hand traps and everything else that a modern hand will entail. And but I think definitely, what would I say on a scale of 1 to 10? I think a 7. A 7, It's definitely not pretty to see, a format dominated by one deck, but this is also not the first time and also probably not the last time in the history of this game that this will happen. But compared to, previous tier 0 formats, I'd say Ishizu tier is a deck with very much clear-cut weaknesses and also a lot more tools you have against it. Like if someone dropped a dad against you back in 2008, the game was over. You lost so much tempo to that dad. It was a 2800 body you had to contest with. Nowadays, any deck that can like overlay 2 level 4s can already, make a tier player shed those tears as well. And I think with that lengthy response, we'll get into the last question I got on Twitter from Slightly Remando. Lovely gent that hosts a Yu-Gi-Oh! Fashion Showcase series where he shout outs different products and everything. So check him out if you have the time or would like to keep up with the game in a sense like that. The question from him is, do I consider hosting my own Yu-Gi-Oh! Fashion Showcase as a regular series? Probably not. I'll leave that to you. I'm definitely not, hip and trendy enough or keep up with a lot of like the new things in the game as much, and am able to, consistently get those news out if, they arise. And also, I need to be like invested to want to talk about news. I think if I've talked about news in the past on the channel, it's been mostly relating to Morphtronics or like specifically stuff that has, I guess my name on it, be it, new Dynamorphia support or like mostly Morphtronics support. So yeah, I probably won't do that. But on that note, I've been like maybe thinking a bit about what I could do. In terms of like formats, I'm thinking of doing a small world guide for Morphtronics, as I'm really enjoying that card in the deck at the moment. Have like once or twice talked about it with someone in the comments. And initially when Small World released, I made like a gigantic ass Discord post of the multiple Small World lines. Maybe turn that into like a small video for like the Morphtronics Small World enjoyers out there to like have a guide for that. And otherwise, I'll just, see what works. We'll probably get to some profiles in the next couple of weeks. With Battles of Legend coming out, I will definitely have to take a look at the dice-based cards finally, now that we're getting those, and we'll probably release a profile to those. And otherwise, yeah, expect the usual. Maybe at one point, me and Jaden will be able to, get the progression series back from the hiatus, we are currently on, but we currently both are just not in a position where we are able to spare that time in the week. But yeah, with those questions out of the way, again, if you have any further questions, feel free to drop those down in the comments below. I'll, try to answer them equally as, equally as lengthy as I did the ones shown in this video, even if it will be in text form. So, if you're curious on, my takes on some things, maybe check the comments and leave one yourself down below. I will once again leave you guys with a very, very, very humble thank you for just this crazy amount of support. Just thinking that over 500 people by now, have hit the subscribe button and are, getting notifications whenever my silly ass does something along the lines of normal summoning Cellforn and explaining what it does for the 1500th time on this channel. But with all that out of the way, I'll again thank you guys very much for 500 subscribers and for watching, and see you guys again next time. But until then, goodbye.